Hello, my name is Glenn Strack, and I lead the reporting, budgeting, analytics practice for AcctTwo Shared Services. Today, we are going to talk about the reporting options for financial visibility inside of Sage Intacct. All right, let's get started. Once again, my name is Glenn Strack, and I do lead the reporting, budgeting, and analytics practice at AcctTwo Shared Services. You can see a little bit about my background, my education, and my interests. I love talking, reporting, and training reporting, and working on reports and budgets. All right, our objectives for today. By the end of this session, you should be able to explain the benefits of each reporting type, and there are 4 inside Sage Intacct. You should be able to choose a reporting type based on your requirements. You should be able to create an interactive custom report, and you should be able to create a pivot table inside of Sage Intacct. So AcctTwo delivers the future of finance and accounting to our customers with a focus. We are the only financial ERP we support is Sage Intacct. We have the experience with a dedicated team of over 100 people, which has helped over 1,000 organizations leverage Sage Intacct to optimize finance and accounting through software implementations, accounting outsourcing, and consulting. And through recognition, Sage Intacct is recognized AcctTwo as a Partner of the Year every year, the Partner of the Year from 2014-2018. We are a leader in the overall customer satisfaction according to reviews on G2 Crowd. We are a great place to work based on reviews at Glassdoor. All right, so AcctTwo has unparalleled experience, 800 plus Intacct implementations, 1,200 plus Intacct consulting and development projects, 40 plus Intacct implementation consultants, over 15 development and technical services resources. We are a large team. We understand success requires going beyond the core products a lot of times. So we offer Sage Intacct Plus. Sage Intacct Plus has 3 components, which is the consulting wing. Secondly, the AcctTwo technical services, where we can create code, whatever it is that you need to enhance your experience inside Sage Intacct. And lastly, the area that I'm over is Sage Intacct plus reporting and analytics, which includes the new interactive customer report writer, industry-specific dashboards, management visibility, reporting packages, training, and budgeting. So let's start with an overview of the reporting areas inside of Sage Intacct. So there are 4 reporting areas inside Sage Intacct. They are standard, custom, financial, and interactive custom report writer. Let me just tell you a little bit about each of these 4 types, and then we'll dive into each one more in depth. So standard reports are out of the box. Standard reports are out of the box, canned reports that are there for your use, and they're very helpful. With these standard reports, you can filter the input, but you have very little control over the look and feel of the output. Custom report writer goes down to the Sage Intacct data tables. You pull fields from that data table, and then you can pull fields from related tables to make a columnar type report. So very useful. Some limitations we'll talk about, but also very useful, and we use this a lot. The financial report writer. This is where you would go if you want statements. So unlike the custom report writer and the interactive custom report writer, the financial report writer is not transactional data. It is in great detail, but it's not transactional. It is summarized by chart of accounts, by dimensions, by time periods, by actual versus budget. Lastly, there's a new interactive custom report writer, and this also uses the Sage Intacct data tables, but it takes us places we've never been able to go before inside of Sage Intacct. So let's get started diving in a little bit deeper. So the first thing, a lot of times you may say, well, I need a report. Well, I have these 4 reporting options: standard, custom, financial, and interactive. So where do I start? Well, we've put in a little decision tree for you to look at and help you make this decision of where's the best place to start. Well, the first question you should ask yourself is, do I want a financial statement or do I want a transactional listing? So if you want a statement, then you're likely going to go to the financial report writer. And inside the financial report writer, there is a financial report library with pre-built reports, or you can create your own. Or you can have your partner assist you with this process. If you want transactional data, well, there are pre-built options such as the standard reports. They are pre-built to filter the input, and you get a predetermined output look and feel. You also can go to, if you want a little more flexibility in the data that you're pulling, if the custom report writer is not enough for you, then you can go to the custom report writer. And this will get you data that you can pull from the Sage Intacct data tables. But if you need to go above and beyond, if you need to see your output while you're building a report, to see time comparisons, to do pivot tables, to have dynamic output, to do trend data, to see time periods on rows, then you may very well want to explore the interactive custom report writer. So let's start diving in, and we're going to start with the standard report writer. So remember, as I mentioned earlier, these are pre-built canned reports. You can filter the input, but you have very limited control over the look and feel of the output. We use these standard reports a lot. I mean, there's a trial balance, the general ledger report, the AP and AR aging, etc. There are some things here. Let me back up a couple steps here. There we go. So some things to be aware of with the standard reports is they are predefined canned reports, like I've mentioned. You have limited control over the look and feel of the output, but yet they meet most of our requirements. You know, the AR and AP aging reports, great reports, will meet most of our requirements. The general ledger, the trial balance, etc. There are these standard reports in almost every module. All right, there are some key capabilities of these standard reports. They are quick, out of the box, pre-built, design layouts. There's drill down from the results. They're easy to use. You can use any date range you want in most of these. You can customize your date range. And you can memorize these standard reports and add them to a dashboard. All right, some tips and tricks relating to these standard reports. Well, so in some legacy systems, you could see when you ran the trial balance what your year-to-date balance was on revenue expense accounts. In Sage Intacct, it's a little different because revenue and expenses flow into retained earnings or net assets, depending on your organization, flows in real time just based on the dates you report. So if you run a report, it doesn't matter if it's a week, a month, a year, or 5-year period, you will not see beginning balances in your revenue and expenses account because they will have been rolled into your retained earnings or net assets. Now, but sometimes, maybe you always want this, maybe you're used to seeing it this way, sometimes if you're running a report, let's say for July through December, you may want to see your January through June beginning balances in your trial balance. And then have all prior year balances have been rolled into retained earnings or net assets. Well, we do have that option on the trial balance in the general ledger report, and it is just retained year-to-date balances. And I will show you that as we dive into our demo. So let's switch over to our environment. And as I mentioned earlier, when you go into most any module, you will see a set of standard reports. And in cash management, we have a number of registers. We have a cash balances report, etc. In AP, we have some 1099 reports. We have AP ledger, bills analysis, recurring transactions. We have the bills register and the check register. Of course, we have the vendor aging and the vendor list. All these standard reports are very useful, very easy to use, and they will allow you to filter the input. In AR, we have a similar set of reports to AP. Instead of vendor aging, we now have customer aging. We have receipts and sales registers. In purchasing, we have some standard reports also. So let's come back up to the general ledger, and there's a couple of reports that I'd like to talk about. So one of the things that we have not been able to do inside of Sage Intacct in the past is to show unique combinations of a chart of account in all of our dimensions. Well, Intacct has recently released a new standard report called Dimension Balances Report. And I'd like to show you this just so that you're aware of it. If I come down here to the bottom, I can select which dimensions that I want to see. So in this case, I'm going to say for account, department, location, and class, even though I could choose other dimensions also. I'm going to hit done. And I'm going to choose the time period that I want to run this report for. So let's just say I want to run this for the second half of 2017. And I'm going to go ahead and hit view. Oops, it always wants you to choose an account range. I'm just going to say all accounts. And I'm going to view. And let's see how that comes up. So what you're seeing is each unique combination of account and the dimensions I chose, what the opening balance was, what the change was for the time period I selected, and what the close balance is. Notice you can drill down on those dollar amounts And as I scroll down, you're going to see every single unique combination of account and the dimensions I selected with the balance. So that's a very handy report. Now notice for revenue expense, there is no beginning balance because revenue and expense will have been moved into retained earnings or net assets real time based on the dates of your report. Now, let's take a look at a trial balance. And we're just going to run this for 7/1/2017, which is where my demo date is. Through the end of 2017. And I'm just going to go ahead and view. And what you're going to see, as we've talked about, is there is a beginning balance in your balance sheet accounts. Then you see your debits and credits for whatever time period you selected, adjusting debits and credits, and then your final balance. Well, adjusting debits and credits are a little different. And I just want to point this out. A lot of times during the year, you're obviously making entries into the system. The books have to be open to do that. You get to the end of your fiscal year, you close your books, the auditors come in at some point, they give you some adjusting entries. You can open the books back up for the prior year and post those, or you have a second alternative, which is under General Ledger, you have journal entries, which you can only post to when the books are open. You also have adjusting journal entries, which you can only post to when the books are closed. Now, very few people would have access to post to these adjusting journal entries, but the fact is they can only be used when the books are closed, so they're ideal to input auditor adjusting year-end entries. And when you do that, they are segregated on the trial balance in these two columns. Now, back to the beginning balances here in this trial balance report. If there was a beginning balance, it will show up here for whatever, at the start of whatever time period we chose, which for us was the second half of 2017. But as I scroll down, you'll see there are no beginning balances in the revenue and expense accounts because those amounts have been rolled into retained earnings or net assets, depending on your organization. Now, sometimes you want to see those year-to-date balances as your beginning balance in your trial balance report, and just have all prior year dollars having rolled into net assets or retained earnings. So how do we get that inside of Sage Intacct? Well, there's a simple option that we mentioned earlier on the PowerPoint. If I look at my filters and I scroll down, what you're going to see is this retain year-to-date balances option. So I'm going to click that, and we're going to view this same report. And what you're going to see is we now, in revenue expense, have current year, January through the end of June, balances in each of our revenue expense accounts, but all prior year revenue expenses have been moved into our net asset or retained earnings accounts. All right, and really, we have the same concept with the general ledger on this standard report where we can scroll down and there is an option, if I did not pass it, to retain year-to-date balances. All right, so let's get back to the PowerPoint. All right, our next reporting area is the custom reports. So these are transactional reports. You can do a little grouping with them, but in essence, they give you transactional level detail. They're taken straight from the Sage Intacct data tables Therefore, it is just raw data. You have to be a little bit careful when you pull this data because you may have to remove stat accounts. If you have cash and accrual, you may have to remove the non-default set of books. You may have some user-defined books that you don't want to flow up. So you'll have to filter out the data that you don't want in your report. All right, but let's get started. Let's dive into this a little deeper. So custom reports, there are some typical reports you might see, such as this permissions report. A lot of times if a bank wants a positive pay file, historically we've created them in these custom reports. Once in a while, the standard report for customer vendor aging doesn't meet an organization's needs. And when that's the case, which is the exception, but when that's the case, we often turn to the custom reports because we can just go down into the data tables, look at the aging tables, and pull the data and customize it the way it needs to be based on specific requirements. You can also pull audit trails out of here, and of course you can do vendor customer lists and 1,000 other things. All right, but there are some things to be aware of with the custom reports. It is a bit of a trial and error process to find the proper table to start with because your first step in this process is to pick a data table. Well, right here, you see in our screen print, if we wanted to start AP, there are approximately 15 different AP tables, accounts payable tables that we might start with. And it's not always clear which one to start with. So sometimes you have to open up the table, see what fields are available, see what related tables are available, what fields are in those, etc., to determine if you're in the right place to get the data that you need. These are columnar type reports, so just rows and columns of data, usually transactional. In other words, you're kind of limited what you can do with the look and feel. Once you decide what table to start from, most of the tables will have related tables, and those related tables may have related tables, and those third level tables may have fourth level related tables. And you may be looking for a field, and you have to search a bit and open up tables and subtables, etc., to find the field that you're looking for. Sometimes that's a bit of a process. It may take a little bit of time, but I just want to point that out since we're talking about things to be aware of. There is no budget data inside these custom reports, never has been. You get one time period for the whole report. So as you'll see on financial reports, you can choose multiple time periods. Not here. You choose one time period, and that applies to the whole report. Now, there is, as I've mentioned, a little catch in that this is raw data, so that you may need to filter out duplicate data. Just be aware of that. You know, once you create this report, you would submit, maybe tie it out to a trial balance or a GL report or something, depending on what kind of data you're pulling. All right, custom reports, key capabilities, some things that I'd like to mention. So number one, yes, this is transactional level data, but you can group up to use three components to group this data, or 3 levels deep. So a lot of times we're grouping based on a general GL account and maybe 2 dimensions. We pull fields from a data table and then it's related tables. So potentially there's hundreds of tables and thousands of fields to choose from. It is transactional level data, so if that's what you're looking for, it's a great thing. You can do some filtering, which you often will need. And if you have more than one filter, you have to decide and versus or. If you have more than two, you can do some formulas with brackets using ands and ors like we have in the screen print here. This is a step-by-step wizard. It walks you through the process. In general, that's a good thing. Occasionally, it can be a little limiting, but overall, it's good. It walks you step by step through the process and assists you in building your reports. There is a custom date range, so you can run these reports for whatever date range that you want. All right, some tips and tricks relating to custom reports. So when you group data on a custom report, you get this option to show details and not to show details. So basically what this is saying is when I say show details, what I get is my unique combination of whatever chart of account or dimensions I select a group by. It gives me the unique combination, and then it gives me the individual transactions and then the total. And then it gives me the next unique combination of chart of account, whatever dimensions I selected, with the transactions underneath it and the total, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I choose no, what I get is a different looking report in that there is no transactional level detail. It's just a unique set of chart of account, whatever dimensions I select, and a total with no transactional detail. Then the next unique set and a total, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a bit of a different looking report. The next tip, no tricks here, is that for these custom reports, Intacct has taken the time to build out some help screens that show you how to build specific reports. And I've created some links here. You can also just go to Sage Intacct help screen, do a search on custom reports, and it will show you these links. But I also have them here. So it walks through how to create a user permissions report. The help screens walk through how to create a positive pay file, how to do aging reports. So there's very good help in walking through specific reports. All right, so let's do a demo inside the custom report writer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip back over to my demo environment, and we are going to go down to General Ledger. I have created a custom report. I just wanted to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go, and I could get there through the Reports tab, but I've placed in General Ledger under Custom Reports, and this report is called GL Detailed Group. And you can see when we run this that we get two sets of dates, and I failed to mention this during my discussion of the standard report, so let me just take a step back and say that you get this kind of date option on the standard reports, and in most cases on the custom reports, like we're looking at now, where you have two rows for dates. On the top row, you can say what today is, and today can be any day that you want. And I'll just use some shortcut keys to get me to the last day of December. And then I could say, I want to run this for the current month or any of these system reporting periods. Well, in this case, I'm going to say current year to date, which would be the same thing in this case as saying current year because we're looking at the last day of the year. Alternatively, I can choose whatever date range I want by putting dates in this second row. If I put dates in the second row, the report will use this second row and override whatever I put in the first row. So it will ignore the first row if I put dates in the second row. So I just wanted to point that out. Well, in this case, we're doing the current year, but we're saying the current year, today is the last day of 2017. And I'm going to go ahead and view that so I can show you what one of these columnar type reports look like. And it comes up pretty quick. And in this case, you can see a unique combination of accounts, department, and class. And we've selected certain fields to display going across. So we've got this unique combination. We've got our transactions, and then we've got a total. And you just see that going all the way down. And you saw how quick that report generated. Now, what if we were to build one of these reports? Well, I just want to show you this report wizard and just some highlights of it. So we are going to go, and I could get to this once again, either from reports, custom reports, or through platform services, custom reports, which is where we've gotten to it historically. And there is the GL detail group. And I'm going to go ahead and edit that so we can walk through and just highlight some things. So the first step would be to pick your table. Now, remember what we talked about earlier. You know, there are a lot of tables to choose from, and reality is it's not always obvious where to start. And once again, I'm going to show you, here's your AP options, and you have about 15 AP tables to choose from. You know, reality is, I know that if I'm doing a positive pay file, I'm probably going to start with one of these AP payment tables. If I'm doing a report based on my AP bills, I'm probably starting with one of these AP bill tables. But even then, a lot of times you have to go in, pick a table, look at the fields, see if they meet your needs. If not, then you try a different table. So there are some challenges here, let's say. But in this case, I want to start with the GL entry table. So keep in mind that in Sage Intacct, all subledger data flows to the general ledger. So I'm going to say that again, all subledger data flows to the general ledger. Therefore, if I'm pulling a general ledger report, I'm pulling data from throughout the system. So in this case, I've chosen the GL entry table to start with. And we will just say that. And we have 15 steps. The number of steps depends on what options you choose. I think it's anywhere from 12 to 16 steps. But because I have some grouping in here. So the second step, now that we've chosen our table, the next step would be pick some fields inside that GL entry table that I want to display in the report. And every field that I click will become a column in my report. All right, so I've chosen a number of fields. I could choose others if I want. A lot of times if I choose a record number, I can drill down on that into the record. But related to the GL entry table is the department table and the GL account table and other tables down below. Related to the department table is the parent department and the department manager tables, which I could open up. And if I open them up, they may have related tables. Well, and I can pick fields from any of these tables. As I scroll down, I have a lot collapsed. If I was to open this up, I would be scrolling down for quite a ways, because in reality, there are thousands of fields and hundreds of tables to choose from. Now, how many related tables you get access to depends on your starting point. It varies. All right, next step. Here you can create some custom columns based on numeric fields, but only numeric fields. So that's nice, but when we get to the interactive custom report writer, you'll see that we can create custom fields based on on all kinds of data, including being able to pull out information out of your memo fields, which we've never been able to do that before inside Sage Intacct, but we can now. All right, so this step 4 in this case, has 3 purposes. Purpose number 1 is you can change the order of the columns just by dragging and dropping. Very nice. Purpose number 2 is my column heading right now for department would say name. But I may very well want to change that to say DEPARTMENT. So it makes more sense what the user is looking at. And I would probably do the same thing down here for location. So that is purpose number 2. Purpose number 3 is sometimes I have a lot of fields in a report. And I may have 3 or 4 date fields. And I want to get rid of one. They're kind of either duplicating or don't apply. And the question becomes, in which one of those hundreds of tables and thousands of fields did I check that I now need to uncheck so that that field is removed? Well, the answer to that question comes here in that, let's say I want to remove the state. Well, the field is called state and is sitting in the GL transaction table, which is related to our original GL entry table. But sometimes I come in here and I may have 3 or 4 levels deep of tables, but this tells me the exact name of the field and the path. All right, so we're going to skip down to filter. So this is an important step because remembering that this is raw data and we may get more data than what we want. So you have to think about what is it that we're looking for in this report? What is sitting in these tables? Well, one of the things, and a lot of times you have to run it and just see if you what you're getting. But one of the things you need to be aware of is you may be getting some draft information if you don't filter it out. You may be getting some statistical information, so I'm filtering that out down here, where we had a time statistical journal, an attendance statistical journal, and we are just saying where the journal is not equal to either of these. But you have a number of options: equals, not equal, includes, excludes, and cases where the field equals or doesn't equal to null. So just be aware of this, that this filtering process is important. And this is the same way where you would look at only revenue expense or only look at fixed assets, whatever the case may be. You could filter based on the GL account number also. Grouping. So in this step, we say we do or we do not want to group our data. Well, in this case, we said, let's go ahead and group our data. And once you group it, then you have to decide what are the fields I want to group. Remember that there is a maximum of 3 fields we can select for grouping. In this case, we said based on account, based on the department name, and based on the class name. And once you do that, you'll have to order the groups. Now you can set some report date and title default values, so all this can be changed at runtime. So you would want to put the reporting period that you're going to run most often with this report. Here is to show details that we talked about earlier, which you can also change at runtime. You can add additional prompts from any fields, whether you used them or not. You can add the prompts in here from these hundreds of tables and thousands of fields. And then the last step is to save the report give it a name if you haven't already, and say what module do you want it to be part of. And usually it'll give you a suggestion based on the table you started with. All right. With all that being said, let us move on to our third reporting type, which are financial reports. Now, remember that financial reports do not give you transactional level data like some of the other reporting types. But the reports can be in great detail because they are summarized by GL account, by dimensions, by actual versus budget, or by time periods. And remember that financial reports are based on the general ledger. In Sage Intacct, all subledger data flows to the general ledger. Therefore, when we run a financial report, we're getting data from throughout the system. So the main purpose of these financial reports, the main purpose is for financial statements, even though you can, and they do get used for some other purposes, but that's the number one. The number one purpose. All right, so moving on. I can get my PowerPoint. There we go. So maybe some typical reports might be a fund or grant balance report, statement of cash flow, balance sheet, P&L, cash balance, all these standard reports and 1,000 other different reports that you might run out of here. Now, some things to be aware of with the financial reports. In any reporting system, there's some things to be aware of. And I just think we should talk about this for each of these reporting types. As I've mentioned, these reports are summarized by chart of account, by dimensions, by time, and by actual versus budget. So there is no transactional level data, but it can be a lot of detail. And from that detail, from the report in HTML, you can drill down to the general ledger, and then from the general ledger down to the original data entry. I want to let you know that there are no time periods on rows in the financial report writer. The time periods show up on the columns, not in the rows. And really, for the standard reports, for the custom reports, and for the financial report writer, we do not see time periods on rows. We see time periods on columns exclusively. The interactive custom report writer, as you will see, has changed that. All right, but back to the financial report writer. You have ability to group data, but it's a limited nesting of data. So maybe 2 levels deep, or maybe on the rows you have your chart of accounts group and then expanded by a dimension. And then on the columns you expand by another dimension. So there's some great functionality in here, but when it comes to nested grouping of dimensions, there are some limits there. The formatting of the financial report output is good, but it is limited what you can do with that. So your reports may not be board ready. They may be, depends on the requirements. All right, but there are some key capabilities of the financial report writer. So it is a step-by-step report writer. It walks you through the process. It leads you down a path, and that can be good. As we mentioned, the financial reports are based on the general ledger. All subledger data flows to the general ledger. Therefore, the financial reports are based on data from throughout Sage Intacct. It does summarize. These reports can summarize by GL account, by dimensions, by time, and actual versus budget. It is easy. It's one of the strong points of the financial report. It's easy to expand by dimensions on rows or columns. In just a few seconds, you can completely change the look and feel of your financial report. You can group by dimensions and GL accounts. And it really is quick and easy to change the look and feel of a report. Very simple process. All right, some more key capabilities. We're on a roll. We often do actual versus budget in here. We can drill down to the general ledger from my financial report and then to the original data entry. It is easy to expand columns by time periods. We can put a different time period on each column. So one column may have year to date, the next column have month to date, the next column may be for the week. Filters are available for the report as a whole, but you also can filter individual rows of the financial report, and very easy to filter individual columns of a financial report based on dimension structures or by time periods or by actual versus budget. Now, a little tip, or a few tips. Number one, there are 4 different report structures, and we'll take a look at this. It is your starting point. It is the fundamental structure of a financial report. It is the one thing that cannot be changed once a financial report is created. So I tell you what, let's just look at these real quick. Option number 1 is the one you're going to see most often, which is the rows are based on account groups. So in Sage Intacct, an account group is basically a subset of your chart of accounts, be that revenue, be that fixed asset, be that PP&E, whatever it may be. And these rows are based on account groups. And typically, the columns then are based on time periods, or they're based on actual versus budget, or they're expanded by a dimension. Option number 2 in the bottom left corner of the screen flips the rows and the columns. The rows are now based on a dimension structure, which is a subset of a given dimension, and your columns now have your account groups, that subset of your chart of accounts. The third option on your screen takes a dimension on the rows and filters that by an account group. So in essence, you get a subset of your dimension, of a given dimension, filtered by a subset of your GL accounts. So in this example here, for the downtown location, we're seeing a P&L based on revenue and expenses. And then for the west suburbs location, we're seeing a P&L again. And then on the columns, it's typically going to be time periods, or maybe actual versus budget, or maybe expanded by a dimension. All right, then the fourth option is taking your account groups that you had in option 1 and filtering the account groups by a dimension structure, or taking that subset of your accounts and filtering it by a subset of a given dimension. So it's pretty powerful. Now, I just want to say that it is very easy back in option number 1 to take any of these subsets of your chart of accounts or account groups and expand them by any dimension. It's quick, it's easy, but when you do that, it's expanded by the whole dimension. And you have limited control of the order of those dimensions, etc. So it's quick and easy, but it expands by the whole dimension. And sometimes you don't want to expand by the whole dimension. Sometimes you want to put the dimensions in a certain order. So that's when we need option 4, which is account groups filtered by a dimension structure on the rows. All right, enough of that. So as we've kind of said, you can filter your columns or your rows by dimension structure. Doing the columns is so easy and quick. It's a simple process. Third tip, there is the ability to show a different dimension value on each page. So we'll try to, if we have time, show you that when we do our financial report demo. There is a default setting for rounding on these financial reports in the Format tab, and it is the default for the whole report that you're creating, but those defaults can be overridden by rounding options that are sitting anywhere you do a calculation. So basically, you can do a calculation a few places. Most typically, it's a calculation inside the account groups, or it's a calculation done on the columns, where you're doing a calculation on columns to the left of where you are, which is called summary on columns. There is a rounding inside of there also. There's 1 or 2 other places where you can do calculations where you also get that rounding option, and these rounding options on the computations will override the default rounding option that you set on the Format tab. All right. So let's dive in to a demo. And there's a few things that we want to take a couple minutes and look at. To do that, I'm going to click, in theory, right here. There we go. All right, so what I want to do is we are going to go to Reports, and I'm going to go to the Financial Reports, and we are going to look at a report called Statement of Activities. And I'm going to go ahead and edit this report. And I just want to show you that we can change the name of any report. And we'll just call this demo. And I'm going to hit save. And we've just changed the name of the report. All right. On this report, we can preview it any time. Let's go ahead and preview this report the way it is. Very straightforward report. Excuse me. The account groups on the rows, and then we're looking at actual versus budget on the columns. And I just want to show you how simple it is to change up this report. So we're going to go to the rows. Oh, and just so you know, when you create a new report, remember I showed you there was the 4 structure types. Well, that's on the Report Info tab. And you know it's just grayed out. The only way that you can change this is you actually create a brand new report, and then you have the option to change up the structure. Because remember, it's the one thing that cannot be changed once you save a financial report is this report structure, because it is the fundamental structure of the report. All right, but we are going to go to the Rows tab now, and I just want to show you that for each line item, and you can see we have quite a few line items in this report, you have the option of summary versus detail. If you choose detail, you will see the individual GL accounts sitting inside of that account group or that subset of your chart of accounts. If you choose summary, Then you have the option to expand by any dimension. And this is so easy to do, and you can do it at different levels. And I'm going to hit cancel on that. And I'm just going to set everything to summary. But I'm also going to collapse the revenue. So anytime it says summary, I can do it on any line. You can expand by any dimension. I just want to show you. I'm going to collapse a couple of these lines. And in revenue, I'm going to go ahead and expand that by departments. And we'll just do it one level down, even though I have a multi-level department structure in here. And let's expand our expenses, all levels are roll up. I just want to show you how quick and easy it is to make this change and give this report a whole new look and feel. And just like that, we have our departments, our revenue expanded by departments, and our expenses expanded by our classes. So I'm going to go back here, and we're just going to set this back the way it was. All right. Next, I mentioned you could show well, before I do that, let's go to the columns. I'm not going in depth in this. This is just a quick tips, but I do want to show you this. So on each column, you do have the ability, as we talked about, to filter the column based on any dimension. If you created the dimension structures, that subset of a dimension. And so I could easily restrict or filter this column by a subset of my department dimension, which we are not going to do in this case. But I do want to show you, we can easily also expand any column by any dimension or by time periods. And if I do time periods and I expand by budget periods, I have this as actual, and then I do the same thing with my budget column. What you're going to see is that for every month, it will put the actual and the budget right next to each other. So my two columns had become about 20 since I'm sitting in October and running year to date. All right. I also wanted to show you under the filters tab, there is an option to run as individual reports. And basically what that does is you can get each location or each department on a separate page. And generally you're doing this in PDF when you're running this kind of report. We also mentioned in the PowerPoint that you can do a overriding rounding option on the Format tab. We can determine that rounding, but keep in mind that any place that you have a calculation, so let's just say right here, if we were to switch this to summary on columns, there then is a rounding option. So any place that there's a calculation, you're going to find a rounding option. All right, so let's hit cancel on that. Let's head back to our PowerPoint. And let's talk about the fourth area, the newest reporting option inside of Sage Intacct. And it is called the Interactive Custom Report Writer. And it really, truly, this subheading, going beyond what you thought was possible, is a true statement, because there is a lot of functionality in here that we've never been able to do inside of Sage Intacct, including having time periods on rows, you know, including doing a pivot table right inside of Sage Intacct. Unheard of. We now have if-then functionality. It's really case-if functionality. We can write SQL statements. We can do formulas on memo fields. We've never been able to do that. This is highly customizable, interactive custom report writer. But let's take a look, and let's look at the what's good and what's lacking and what we can do with it. All right. So typical reports, there are so many different kind of reports you can put in here. Remember, this is basically transactional level data, but there is a lot of different ways to group this data. A lot of different ways to group it. And not just by the chart of accounts in 2 dimensions, but by as many dimensions as you want, or as many pieces of information as you want. All right, but let's talk about what we need to be aware of. Never want you to be surprised. As of this date, sitting near the end of 2019, there are no graphs in here. This is a new report writer. I've been told it's on the roadmap. And at the same time, Intacct is coming out with an analytics tool with some amazing graphs on it, but I've been told that graphing capabilities is on the roadmap to add directly into the interactive custom report writer. Just like the custom report writer, the interactive custom report writer does not have budget data in it. Now, I've also been told that Sage Intacct is looking at this, and we are hopeful that budgets will be added to the interactive custom report writer, since it is on the roadmap for Intacct. Account groups, once again, sitting here near the end of 2019, there are not account groups inside of Sage Intacct, but they are coming soon. Maybe by the time you watch this video. But accounts can be grouped inside the report writer. We can run reports based on account categories today. So if you've got your GL accounts assigned to categories, you can use the categories to group your data inside the interactive custom report writer. Now, key capabilities. Pivot tables inside of Sage Intacct, where when you run them in HTML, you can actually analyze your data by moving the fields around. This is transactional level data, which you can easily summarize with pivot tables. You have the ability to do complex calculations inside of this interactive custom report writer. Now, this can be as simple or as complex as you want, but just, to create a basic report, it's drag and drop, and you add the fields you want, and it's fairly straightforward. But just know that there is that ability to go way beyond that in here. You can do a lot more formatting here than you can in some of the other reporting areas of Sage Intacct. You can customize just about everything in here, and backgrounds and fonts and colors and text and etc. Now, you can, when you run a report, obviously you can have prompts at runtime. Well, those prompts do include dimension groups, which you do not have that inside the custom report writer, but it is inside the interactive custom report writer. When you prompt based on a dimension, you have the ability to select a dimension group, that subset of a given dimension. And when you memorize these custom reports and put them on a dashboard, they will respond to dashboard dimension filters. All right, some more key capabilities. Time periods on rows, as my screen print on the right shows. We have never been able to have time periods on rows inside of Sage Intacct. We can now, and it's pretty easy to do. So in this case, we got months on the rows, and we have years on the columns in a pivot table. Remember when we ran the custom report writer and you picked a table and then you have the search for fields manually by opening up tables? Well, in the interactive custom report writer, you literally can search. There's a search feature to find the fields you want. So you can type in the word date and it'll bring back all the date fields that are available to you. This is drag and drop functionality. You can have one report with many different views. So the typical example may be you'd have a table in detail and then sitting right above it, or sitting to the right of it, or sitting to the left of it, whatever you want. You could have another table that's summary. Just another, I say table, really I should be saying another view on the same report, side by side or stacked. Now, this is not wizard based. Now that's a great thing, because eliminating that wizard means that you have more functionality, more capabilities to create this report any way you want. And, yes, there are steps you go through and you get used to them, and there's a process, but you can, you're not limited by a step-by-step report wizard. All right, some tips. All right. Remember we talked about the financial report writer, which is a great tool. But remember we talked that there were some limitations in that you can group by, let's say, your chart of accounts in one dimension, and then maybe you can expand the columns by another dimension. It's just limited grouping of data based on unique dimensions. Well, in here, you can group together as many fields as you want and show the unique values of those fields, or the unique combinations, I should say, of those fields, and then also see the transactions that hit that unique combination. So you can show that for each unique combination, and it's pretty easy to do. You can do all kinds of formatting. So it's really simple to format rows with different colors, alternating rows. There's just 1,000 different examples of the formatting that you can do. If you can dream it, you probably can do it. As we mentioned earlier, multiple views of the same data on the same report, and Sage Intacct has kindly supplied you with, once you have the interactive custom report writer, you get access to a very large report library, which as of the date of this recording was about 65 reports that you get with the interactive custom report writer. They're sitting in the library ready to be downloaded at no extra cost. And so you may download them and then set them up to meet the needs of your organization. So you may need to filter them additionally. You may need to add some additional dimensions, whatever that may be, but you have a starting point of 60 plus reports. Now, the number of reports in your library depends on the particular modules that you've subscribed to. For instance, if you don't have contracts module, well, you will have a few less reports. If you don't have purchasing, you would have a few less reports. But there is a plethora of reports out there available for your use at no extra cost once you have the interactive custom report writer. All right, let's go beyond what you thought was possible. Let's take a step into the interactive custom report writer. There truly is a lot there, including pivot tables, including grouping transactions by multiple dimensions, rows and columns based on time periods. So let's take a look. And let me go back into our demo environment. And we're going to go to Reports. I'm going to close this other tab. And we're going to go to Interactive Custom Reports. Oops, I clicked on Financial Reports. I wanted Interactive Custom Reports. And I'm going to edit this report. And what you're going to see is there are 3 tabs. There's a Define tab, a Refine tab, and a Prompts tab. And actually, before we go too far in this, let me click over, and I do want to show you the report library. So we are going to go to Reports, Interactive Custom Reports, and up here there is a report library. And in my demo environment, I'm not subscribed to all modules. I want to show you, in this case, I have 46, but I don't have order entry module, I don't have the contracts module. But still, 46 free reports as a starting point is pretty impressive. And you know, like I said, number of reports received depend on the modules you have subscribed to. And I didn't subscribe to time, order entry, contracts, etc. But anyway, here they are. And I just want to show you how to download these. So if you were just to go to, let's say I wanted this AP bill analysis or subtotals report. If I were to edit this report that's sitting in the library, and this is kind of a tip, so you know how to do this, it's a little different. I would hit Save As, top right corner, Save As. That brings up a pop-up screen, and you see these reports are sitting in an Intacct library. So all I have to do, we're in the Save As screen, is move it to my library and hit OK. Simple as that. And then we have access to that report, and we start editing as our report. And we can make changes however we want. I did want to show you that. And we will come back over to this report. So we'll show you that there are 3 tabs. A Define tab where you set up the report. You pull in the fields that you want. So let me show you that. Inside the Define tab, you have your table that you selected. Now, the other thing I did want to show you real quick, so let me just do this. I know I'm jumping around a little bit. There's so much to show you, and with limited amount of time, but I'm going to come here and we're going to ask for a new report, because there's one other point I want to make out that's very important. And if you remember, when we create a custom report, we got to choose from hundreds of tables. Was it obvious which table to start from? Just for AP, there was about 15 different tables. Look at this. Intacct has changed this up in the Interactive Custom Report Writer. Instead of picking data tables, you're picking reporting areas. So if I click on this, you'll see we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 AP tables instead of about 15. So you know if you want to do an AP payment, you're probably going to start with the AP payment tables. Or if you're doing AP bills, you're going to start with the AP bill table, etc. But there's a whole lot fewer reporting areas than there were reporting tables. Now, another tip. If I click Find right here, I get access to a list of the reporting areas, I should say, and the description of what those areas do. So it's a little easier. If I'm not sure, do I want AP bill payment? I'm sorry, if I do I want AP payment or payment legacy? Well, I can read this, and it's going to give me some information about what this reporting area contains and what the purpose of it is, so it'll be more clear as to which reporting area I want to choose, depending on my particular needs. I'm going to cancel on that. Back to the report. I apologize for that. Inside the Define tab, you see your reporting area that you selected. You expand that, and then you have attributes, dimensions, measures, and related objects. Attributes, quite simply, are the non-financial features of this reporting area. I'm going to collapse that. Dimensions are all the dimensions, and if I was expanding, you would see the fields available for each dimension. Measures are your financial data. So in this case, it's amount and transaction amount, but it gives you the table that they're in also. And then you have your related objects. And I could open these up, and potentially I could just keep drilling down. So inside of related is entity. In that case, it doesn't. So just depending on where you're starting from, GL account and all those fields. Under GL transaction, I can drill down to some additional tables. And I can keep drilling down. It feels like right here, that searching that we did inside the custom report writer, but now we're in the interactive custom report writer. Well, guess what? There is a better solution in here, one that is not available inside the interactive custom report writer, where now, instead of searching and drilling for the field that I want, I can click that. This is a search functionality, and I know I want a date. I don't know what date I want, or I don't know where to find it. So I can just type in date, and the initial search takes a few seconds, and after that it goes really fast. But you can see it's searching, and that was fast. But it gives me every field that had the word date in it and the table that it's in. So yes, there are some dates here, but in the contract table, I'm not interested in those. But as I scroll down, you can see that there's dates in all these different tables. And maybe I want the entry date that the transaction was put in. More likely, I want the posting date. What date did the transaction post? But the point is, I can easily find the fields that I'm looking for, and it gives me the field name and the table name. So if I was just looking, I knew I wanted a posting date, I type in posting, and you can see, well, revenue posting, that's not what I'm looking for in the item table. GL posting date in the summary table and a posting date in the GL transaction table. I could easily add both those dates and see which one was more appropriate. But the point is here that I can easily find the fields that I need. All right. So we can add these fields. They're drag and drop. I could just drag it over, or I could double click on the field and it put it where I want. I can do filtering in here. So I can just say I want to add a new filter. It'll give me the fields I select to filter based on those, or I can find other fields that have not yet been selected. The filtering is a little different, where you're not adding brackets, but you can click on this and it groups things together. So if I had more conditions, I could group any set of 2 or 3 or 4 if I wanted, and say it's an and or an or. So it's really just by clicking to do the grouping these filters together. and switching from ands and ors. All right. We're going to jump to the prompts tab just so I can show you this. And there's 1,000 things I can show you in here, but we're just going to scratch the surface for today. But I just want to give you a feel for this. It's easy to add new runtime prompts. So I can do a column prompt with any of the columns that are in my report, or I can select other columns from the hundreds of thousands of fields that are available. I can select those also and use those as runtime prompts, as runtime filters, let's say. I can also create variable prompts. So I can create a prompt and be whatever I want to be. You know, I could put every month of the year. I could put billable or not billable, you know, but that's a field, so I don't need that. But there are those times where you need to make up your own prompts. Put it here. Or you can choose a column. But you can see that we're prompting based on user. We're prompting based by GL account, by account type, by posting date, by transaction amount. And when you choose that posting date, it's going to give you any date range that you want, or it's going to give you the option to say, use a system reporting period such as month to date or year to date or week, etc. So you can select from those also. All right. And this right here, just so you know, is one way to preview your data while you're still in the system. Now, so you preview here also under the Refine tab, under the Prompt tab, you can preview it and get your prompts also. All right. Back to the Refine tab, we're seeing our data. Oh, well, I'm going to pop back over here just to show you. So there are a lot of things that we can do in terms of formulas. So in this case, we've got a posting month and all that, and then we've got a posting date. So we look at our output, we see our posting date, and we've added a posting month. Well, what if we don't want the date, but we just want the year? We just want month and year. That's how we want to see this report. I want to show you how to do that. So we can come to this Define tab, and we can take this posting date, and we can edit this formula. Oops, I clicked on the wrong field. This posting date, edit this formula, come down here to the functions, come down to the date functions, wrap it in a year function, and then we would call this posting year. Hit OK, come back here, and we no longer are seeing our individual dates. Instead, we are seeing the year pulled from the date field. Pretty amazing. I mean, it's just the kind of stuff that we can do. And like we said, we can do case if then statements. We can do string functionality, string functions where you can pull out words from memo or description fields. We can do pivot tables. So let's do that right now. Oh, before I do that, one more thing. So sitting in this report, we have the department and the department ID. I don't want those two separate fields. I want them together. So let's just do that. I'll show you that real quick. We'll come back over here to the Define, and there's my department field, and there's my department ID. So I'm going to click on the department. I'm going to hit Edit Formula. And I'm going to concatenate that. Oops, actually I want a space. Open parentheses. Close. And then I'm going to concatenate that again. So we've opened the parentheses, do another concatenation. We're going to pull in our department ID, and then we're going to close that bracket with another concatenation, single quote, close brackets or parentheses. And if I did this correctly, when I click OK, it will save it. And then we're going to go look at the result of that. And what we're going to see in our view is we now have department name and then the ID after it. So we no longer need this field. And we're going to go ahead, and there's a couple things we could do. We could just hide it. We could remove it from the view and keep it in the report, but we're literally going to delete it because we no longer need it. All right. Like I said, there's 1,000 different things that we can do, and we can spend hours showing you, but due to limited time, what I do want to show you, one last thing, which is to create a pivot table. So up here in the Refine tab, under this icon, you have the option to add new views. Well, one of those views is the pivot table. I'm going to scroll down, all puts new views at the bottom. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to drop it up here. And I now have two views on the same table. And I can drop that wherever I want. I'm just going to set that up so we can see it a little better. And say OK. So that eliminates our scrolling. Now for this pivot table, I don't need the journal, so I'm going to exclude that from this view. I want to, this month number keeps the months in order, but I don't need to see that. So I'm going to go down and hide it. And that will pop up. And I'm going to scroll down. And when I see this month, I'm going to click the icon. I'm going to hide it. And then I'm going to hit done. But that hidden month number is keeping my months in chronological order. I don't need to, let's see, what else do I not want? I don't want the GL account name here, just a number. I'm going to exclude that from this view. This view is independent of the view down below. You can see we have the years going across the top. And in here, we can add, we have ways to filter top or bottom. We can create subtotals and grand totals, but let's create a row total after the values. And let's create a column totals after the, right over here. We can take this, instead of filtering by month and department, we can take this and we can move this left or right. So if I moved it left, it would now sort by department. We have, but that's not really what I'm looking for in this report. What I do want to do is I can move this column and put it in sections. I could add it to the pivot table here. I just want to set it as a prompt. And in that prompt, I'm going to select, let's just choose high school. And now it's only showing me the high school data for all these years, for these months, with these account numbers. Now I could take this account number. If I wanted to, I could have it up here as part of the pivot table. But that's a little bit not as readable. Whoops. What I want is to take that right there. And let's move it back to, I can move it up and down in the pivot table. I can move it to prompts. I can move it to sections. I'm going to move it back to the rows. And maybe it is, I don't really even care about this account number. And I can just exclude it. And I'm getting my revenue and expense, net income for each year, for each month, for the high school department or G&A department, or whatever department that I choose. So the capabilities here are pretty amazing, and the functionality is immense. So let's move on back to our PowerPoint to finish up. You know, if you have any questions, let us know. And who is us? How do you let us know? Right here. You can visit us at www.AcctTwo.com/Sage Intacct Plus, or you can get more information there. You can contact your AcctTwo customer success manager listed here with email address, or you can contact me directly, gstrack@AcctTwo.com. I'll be happy to talk to you. I do report training. I have reporting solutions. I'd just be happy to answer your questions. So let's go beyond what you thought was possible. AcctTwo has a lot of reporting solutions, and as you've seen, they are just getting better and better and better. So I appreciate your time today, and let me know what I can do for you. Thank you.